I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. All the ways to communicate with us right there at the bottom of your screen. You can email us. The address is thestory@kgw.com. You could also use the hashtag TheStoryKGW on Twitter, or just leave us a voicemail. Call our phone number, 503-226-5090. We begin tonight in Washington County, where the emergency medical services system is being overhauled. That could mean a new ambulance provider and new ways to track how well EMS providers are saving lives. County leaders said the overhaul has been in the works for decades, and it has nothing to do with the current EMS performance. However, investigative reporter Evan Watson discovered it is happening as ambulance response times have fallen short of county standards.
Metro West Ambulance is the primary ambulance service for all of Washington County, stretching from West Portland to the Tillamook State Forest. The county and Metro West have worked under an emergency services agreement for the past 25 years, first signed in 1997.
Just in the fact that it's been that long, it's antiquated, and our ability to modernize our system and move forward is halted by the actual agreement.
County leaders like Adrian Donner say they desperately need an upgrade.
Working together to develop a system that will be modernized, will better serve the folks who call 911 in Washington County.
The county will end its current contract with Metro West next year, opening up the bidding process to anyone. Metro West says it supports that decision, even if it means having to compete for the next contract.
This has not been a surprise, and we actually welcome it because it will give a chance to do some needed updates.
Moving forward, Washington County wants a centralized dispatch system, unified and consistent data sharing between the ambulance provider, fire departments, and the 911 center, and greatly improved quality metrics, detailed ways to track how well EMS workers are doing and what happens after they arrive to a call.
Finding out how quickly they can identify a heart attack, how quickly they can let the emergency department know, that's much more telling for the outcome for the patient.
Right now, the county's agreement with Metro West Ambulance is limited. It mainly tracks ambulance response time. EMS teams have up to 8 minutes to respond in the most populated areas, like Beaverton, Tigard, and Hillsborough. They have 11 minutes to get to an emergency in this green area, and up to 30 minutes the farther north and west you go in the county. Both county leaders and Metro West have stressed that upgrading the EMS system has been in the works for years, and it's not a performance-based move.
Is this shift in any way connected to performance within the county?
No, it's really based on this ongoing transition, looking at the system.
Performance has not played a role in this decision moving forward, and so all of our performance is public record.
But the public record shows EMS performance is falling short of county benchmarks. Washington County requires Metro West to respond on time to 911 calls at least 90% of the time. In the county's most recent 18-month review, Metro West failed to meet that benchmark throughout the last 5 months of 2021, falling to about 83%. Metro West Public Information Officer Jan Lee says staffing issues throughout the healthcare industry are to blame.
I would say that staffing has been a big issue, definitely, along with call volume. The types of patients, with the surges in COVID, there's a lot of different factors that come into play there.
Metro West also failed to meet another county requirement, essentially just being available. It's one that affects local fire departments as well. The county tracks something called ARM-UP, the number of times another agency must go beyond responding to also transport and take care of the patient. Metro West can turn over no more than 1% of its calls to another agency, like a fire department crew. For most of 2020 and the beginning of last year, that was no problem. But by the end of 2021, Metro West had surged past the allowed level. Lee says a surge in calls, how long it takes to get someone turned over to a hospital, and ambulance staffing can all play a role in that number spiking.
When we take a look at the performance, that's been discussed with Washington County, and again, just several different factors.
In this review of the EMS system, Washington County says Metro West Ambulance did not satisfactorily meet their obligations. Lapses in performance were not singular events, and performance improvement plans were started earlier this year. All that said, Donner says the county hopes to have an updated EMS system and ambulance provider in place by the fall of 2023.
We've been working for 10 years to really figure out where the system is going and how to build the best system we can.
Interesting stuff, Evan. Here's a question. What does the county want to do that the contract won't allow them to do?
Well, modernized EMS agreements allows for a lot more quality metrics, data tracking, things of that nature. So right now the county can really only see how quickly an ambulance gets there. They cannot see the other factors of that, of what happens after, the patient care, the things like that. So that's what they're really trying to get at with this next agreement, this next contract.
Okay, and they can't do that unless they get a new contract and a new system, it sounds like. And also, I just wanted to clarify, it sounds like these are sort of two separate issues, the ambulance response time that's going on, and then also the desire for a new contract and a new system.
Yes, and the county and Metro West have clarified and emphasized that this has been ongoing for years and years in the making, trying to upgrade this system. It just so happens that at the same time, a lot of the Metro West performance standards are not meeting those county benchmarks, and that maybe provides some questions moving forward.
All right, thank you, Evan. We'll be watching. Appreciate your report. A month ago, the Clark County Sheriff announced his agency would start cutting back on the type of calls they'd respond to because he just did not have enough staff. We thought this would be a good time to check in and see how things are going. Here's Blair Best.
The types of calls they've had to stop responding to are things like thefts and trespassing. Now, since March, they've been able to hire 11 staff, but have lost 24 more. It's a problem that's rapidly getting worse.
That is detrimental, as you can just imagine.
Signs like this one are posted around Clark County, advertising that they have the lowest staffed police agency in the state and the lowest law enforcement to citizen ratio in the country.
It hurts at times, but I totally understand because it is a compensation. It's a wage thing.
In the last 6 months, Clark County Sheriff Atkins has lost 20 deputies to other local law enforcement agencies, offering competitive incentives such as sign-on bonuses.
When people locally look to go onto a police department for the first time and they see that I'm not offering a signing bonus and somebody else is, they immediately go elsewhere.
They currently have 70 openings, but even if filled, it's still not enough to be competitive. And on top of that, it takes 12 to 18 months to hire and train new officers.
If we're full and had all of those people in place, we still are the least staff per 1,000 residents of any county in the state of Washington.
I think it's absolutely disgusting.
People speed because they can. They break laws because they can.
Jack Thompson's neighbor recently shot and killed someone who was attempting to break into their house. Police were unable to respond right away.
I have 2 loaded weapons now at all times, front door and back door.
I'm packing.
A safety measure more and more residents are now taking.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And I know it's not the existing police force and the sheriff's department. It's not their problem. They got their hands tied behind their back.
What do you have to say to Clark County residents who are afraid for their safety?
Well, I feel for them, but what I could tell them is the sheriff's office is well trained.
No, I think they're doing a great job. If you hadn't brought it to my attention, I wouldn't even pay attention to it. Because, I just think they do a wonderful job.
The sheriff now asking for the public's support on a tax increase that will soon be on the August ballot to bring more money to law enforcement agencies to help them attract and retain staff. Blair Best, KGW News.
Thanks, Blair. Back in Portland tonight, it is an important one for the future of Portland's form of government. Something called the Charter Commission, a group of volunteer citizens from Portland, will decide on a final reform package to send to voters. So tonight's kind of a big night, huh?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a really monumental night, for sure.
That's Andrew Spear, a member of the commission. He and 19 other volunteers have worked for the past year and a half to study other forms of government and come up with a plan to make Portland's city government work better. The groups held 26 listening sessions. 580 people showed up to those to get input on the plan. They also took 1,200 comments and met with 32 community-based organizations as they shared this final reform package. Here's the problem. Portland's current form of government has 4 city commissioners. They're elected citywide plus the mayor. The mayor then assigns them departments or bureaus to run for the city. That has led to silos where the commissioners look out for what's best for their team, but not for the city as a whole. And the only big thing the mayor can do to fix that is take the bureau away and assign it to himself. But he can only run so many bureaus himself without getting swamped. Mayor Ted Wheeler and others have criticized the city's current system as being dysfunctional. This new proposal, which is being voted on right now by the commission, would change a lot of things. It would increase the city council size from 4 to 12. The city would be divided into 4 parts, and 3 commissioners would be elected from each part of the city. Those elections would be held using ranked choice voting, which is a system where you vote for multiple candidates. You pick the candidate you want the most, then the second most, and the third most, and so on. Also, the mayor would still be elected citywide, but they would not vote with the council unless there was a tie, and then the mayor would step in and vote to break the tie. The mayor would also be in charge of actually running the city with the help of a professional city manager. Now, some of you have wondered about the salaries for all those commissioners. I asked Andrew Spear about that today.
Have you figured out like compensation? Are the 12 commissioners going to get paid as much as the 4 do now?
Yeah, so what we're recommending within our referral is that the commission be silent on what salary levels are with our recommendation, our charter commission, but that a salary commission be formed sometime in the next year to 18 months that would then be made up of 5 HR professionals, and there's some stipulations, can't be a city employee, those types of things, and then have conflicts of interest. And so then that commission would then set the salary for all the elected. So thinking the 12 council members, the mayor, and then the city auditor as well.
So that's still up in the air. But would this plan fundamentally change the way Portland works as a city? Andrew says, oh, yes.
Yes, I think first and foremost, the answer is yes. And I think the biggest reform that will be most transparent to voters kind of after that 2025 is just the fact that the mayor and the city manager are operating the city, and that there's not, multiple commissioners assigned to different bureaus. This is not going to fix everything in January 1 of 2025 that the city faces today, but it has the pathway to remove the silo effects. It has the pathway to have accountability up to the city manager and the mayor. And then for the mayor to make decisions in a faster order that has comprehensive crossover into all bureaus, all areas of the city, and not just the siloed bureaus that one commissioner or the mayor currently is assigned to.
So lots of changes in the offing. Now, here's my opinion on this. I've lived in Portland for 32 years. Sometimes the government's worked pretty well. A lot of times, not so much. I find this charter commission proposal very interesting. Look, we only get a crack at this every 10 years, and if you are a Portland voter, I really hope you pay attention and tell your friends about it too. Some of you have complained that it's not our form of city government that's weak, but the people who are running it. Well, maybe. I don't know. But you cannot ignore the fact that Portland is the only major city in the country with this ridiculous system of elected politicians running city departments with hundreds of employees and budgets in the millions. I won't tell you how to vote, at least not tonight. That's my promise, but just for tonight. But you should learn all you can about this proposal, and from what I've seen, seems to make a lot of sense. And if the last few years don't tell you there needs to be change in Portland, I don't know what will. That's my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. Maybe I've missed something, or maybe you see it a different way. That's okay. Let's communicate. Send me an email or leave me a voicemail. Our email address is thestory@kgw.com. Our phone number is 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you. Clackamas County finally got all its votes counted just under the certification deadline, but that might not be the end of the saga, because the Secretary of State is now conducting an audit to make sure all those ballot duplications were done correctly. We'll take a look when the story continues. Welcome back. Keep sending your questions and comments to the story at kgw.com. We appreciate it. I'm already seeing some come in and asking about this charter review. One of you asked, what about the staffs? Are they going to multiply and cost $1 gajillion? The last I heard was that they would actually probably budget the staff to be smaller than the existing staffs of the 4 commissioners. The idea being that the commissioners now are running the bureaus, so they need more staff to help them, and the commissioners in the future, if this goes through, would be doing big picture policy things and not running bureaus. So thanks for the question. Great question. If you have a question or a comment, you can give us a call, leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090, or send us an email, thestory@kgw.com. The deadline to certify the May primary has now come and gone, and you know what? Clackamas County did it. They got their ballots counted on time despite a massive ballot mistake that slowed the counting process way down. Yesterday was the deadline to certify the election. Clackamas County Clerk Sherry Hall says they did meet that deadline. It's been quite a month for Clackamas County elections. Dozens of county workers had to pretty much drop all their regular work to duplicate the ballots from the primary because the barcodes on many of them were blurry and the vote counting machine could not read them. The county blamed the printer, which is based in Bend. But Clackamas County Elections dropped the ball as well when they did a test run of ballots before the election and used ballots that they printed out in Clackamas, not the ballots from that Bend printer. Sherry Hall says she knew at the beginning of May that the blurry barcodes were going to be a problem, but she waited until after the election to put together a plan to do something about it. Duplicating the ballots to get the final election tally required teams of 2 workers each from different political parties. One person read the vote from the original ballot to the other person. That second person marked the votes, and then they switched places to double check the ballot. Pretty time consuming, especially when you multiply it by something like 50,000 ballots that could not be read by the machine. Finally, the new ballot was fed through the machine as part of the official count. Now, a lot of you wanted to know, why do it the hard way? Why take county workers and make them hand duplicate the ballots? Isn't there an easier solution? Gerald asked, why on earth are they recreating ballots because of a faulty barcode? Why don't they just put a good barcode on a sticker and cover the bad one? A lot of people wanted to know that one. Seems like a probable solution, so we asked the Secretary of State's office about that. Turns out they told us the stickers would actually make an even bigger mess than the ones they were already dealing with. They tell us stickers would jam the counting machines. Quote, they don't want adhesive anywhere near a volume scanning machine. They also told us that duplicating ballots is in the state's election rules. Not normally do they have to do it on such a wide scale, but they do have to do it sometimes when the ballots are torn or stained. You've also asked this question a few times. Dan wants to know, is there a projected cost of counting of the improper ballots in Clackamas County? And who gets to pay for that? Maybe Sherry Hall should pay all these costs? Well, we asked Clackamas County about that as well. So far, we've not heard back, but it's likely to be expensive with so many county workers doing overtime to fix it all. One estimate from the Oregon Capital Insider put it at about $100,000. And it's doubtful that Sherry Hall will have to pay it herself. The last time she made a ballot mistake, it cost about that much, and the bill went straight to the taxpayers. And it's not over. The Secretary of State's office has ordered an audit into the election results. They say it's standard practice after elections, but they also want additional audits after this mess. That means someone will pull a sample of ballots and hand count them to compare them with the machine's results. Secretary of State Shemia Fagan says it is a necessary step to restore voter trust after this election. Coming up next, we'll go down into the secret tunnels below Portland. The Shanghai Tunnels, a popular tourist attraction that may be closing for good. We'll take a look at why when the story continues. Have you ever toured the so-called Shanghai Tunnels in Old Town Portland? I haven't. They sound interesting, though. Legend has it that the tunnels were used to carry men kidnapped from local saloons to the waterfront to be sold to ship captains. For years, they were very popular, these tours, but now the nonprofit behind the tours says they're losing money and they can't afford to offer them anymore. Here's Devin Haskins.
For nearly 30 years, the tunnels underground Old Town Portland have been one of the area's biggest draws.
People came from all over the world to our tours, and they would call us up for tickets.
Up until recently, the Cascade Geographic Society had been running the tours since the early 90s, showcasing the dark underground history of Portland.
So this is one of the cells reconstructed that they would put the men that they were shanghaiing in.
Excavating part of these tunnels, the research and the tours are the work of Michael Jones, the tour's founder and researcher who died 2 years ago.
He was the Cascade Geographic Society. He was the heart and soul of this. This was his project, his baby.
In 2020, when the pandemic hit, the tours shut down. Then access points to the tunnels were cut off after one business closed for good, and another started doing their own tours using their initial access points. The nonprofit doesn't own the building or the main access points they were originally given permission to use.
Problem is, building owners weren't entirely weren't on our side, and we ended up losing access to 2 of our 3 spaces. and the space that we were giving the tours in. We've lost access to that.
That third access point is below the currently closed Cascade Geographic Society's museum and is a much smaller footprint.
Our agenda was to educate people on the history of Shanghai and white slavery in Portland. That's our mission.
The current space needs permits, safety improvements, and restoration before it can even open. The nonprofit says they're running out of money to restore the new area and expand the museum.
We really want to get back up and running. We need to get back up and running, both to preserve Michael's legacy, to continue his vision, and to bring life back into Old Town.
The Shanghai Tunnels do have a little bit of a contested history, the question being whether or not they were used for human trafficking. Now, you can still take tours through the Shanghai Tunnels. They're just done through a different company. The Cascade Geographic Society hopes to have their tours up and running by Halloween. I'm Devin Haskins, KGW News.
Thanks, Devin. Keep sending your questions and comments to the story at kgw.com. Still ahead, how you can help your community. For this week's Hey Help campaign, we're asking you to donate to our Giving Table. It's a Portland-based nonprofit that makes sure that foster kids and underprivileged children get enough to eat. They do a lot of work in the summer when the kids can't eat breakfast or lunch at school every day. If you want to help out, just hold up your phone's camera to the QR code now on your screen. Or you can always go to kgw.com/heyhelp. This is a micro donation drive, so feel free to give any amount, no matter how small or how big. We've been getting a lot of viewer comments today on the show, so we wanted to just share a couple of them with you. If my phone will open up, Mike wants to know, city managers for smaller cities have salaries far above the mayor of Portland. How is the commission going to address recruiting a city manager, and what will they be paid? Great question, Mike. I think that's going to be taken up by the commission that's going to get together to study this very question. And Boston 5 says, this is the first time I've listened to this show. Keep it up. I love every minute of it. Call them all on the carpet. It's about time. Thank you, Susan, for that nice comment. Well, that's the end of our show. Thanks for watching. Remember, the story, our story, well, that never ends.